it might be helpful at this time to really try and hammer down to exactly why social emotional learning and why it has become so important. Well, it's become so important because we're looking at social emotional learning with a really fine tuned lens now because of the different behavioral exhibitions that we're seeing in our class and the tendencies that we're seeing in our communities. But when we take more of a 30,000 foot view and really take a look at everything, social emotional learning has been crucial since the beginning of education and learning. So it's not a matter of it becoming more important. I think it's just that the attention for the subject in particular is getting heightened, and for good reason. So that's why we're using platforms like Everyday Speech, and there's a plethora of different reasons as why we would do that. But in particular, the three come to mind for myself. So the first of those three are the opportunity for a student to work on their executive functioning skills or their deficits. So our students in our class, just as all of us, have difficulties from time to time controlling exactly what we can and cannot do in our lives, and that comes down to our executive functioning. So our executive functioning is something that's controlled by our PFC, or the prefrontal cortex, and our prefrontal cortex is an ultimate rule setting machine that if is working and firing on all cylinders properly, gives us the opportunity to choose, and it's what makes us special as a species. And there's no better example than in a school setting, to see where the deficits are and also how we can work on those deficits. So if you could see in those different outcomes that we saw, you could see friendship, understanding loss, different social conventions that we should understand. These are all leading back to our ability to utilize proper executive functioning skills. So that's rule number one, or so that's reason number one why this is such an important platform. Outcomes in general, social emotional outcomes, but everyday speech in particular, being the subject of our conversation here, that makes its use very important. So number one, executive functioning practice. Number two is not unrelated, but at the same time, it's worth noting itself that when our students come to us, and we begin to see behavioral exhibitions, we're trying our best to help those students work through preconditioned maladaptive behaviors that don't work well, or not, or within the context that they're in a classroom, are not being functional for them or their peers or the community of the school in general. But it's not a matter of just getting the student to sit and be good and using that kind of top-down method of just sit, just be quiet, just do this, just do that. Because the way our students are coming to us, it's not exactly that simple. It might be that simple in the moment, to help them just be quiet and just sit, just be good, is the kind of the old adage. But at the end of the day, if we want to have sort of a meaningful transition towards these adaptive behaviors that are going to be helpful for them, then we need to facilitate the transformation of their rule sets for their PFC, their prefrontal cortex. And in order to do that, we need to get reps. So they come to us with a whole bunch of reps with a preconditioned behavior, and with a big caveat that we have to understand that some of our students come to us with neurodiversity, and that obviously will play a part in some of the understanding and the curricular planning that we make for those individuals. But if we're looking at a neurotypical individual, let's say, he kind of pens us into a box, but to try and keep things as simple as possible. If we're trying to assist our students in incorporating new rule sets within their developing brain or within their developing frontal lobe, then it takes reps and it takes times. It takes time. Those repetitions can be found in the wild, them learning on the fly, but they'll only be supplemented by using something, a social emotional learning platform like everyday speech. So that's rule number two, or sorry, that's a reason number two. Again, sorry. The third one is that the learner's brain, especially younger children, are extraordinarily plastic, or they have an opportunity, and that opportunity stays with us throughout life. Studies have shown over the last 100 years or so that plasticity is not rigid, and adults also have plasticity, but the majority of the capability of the brain to be plastic in the lifespan is during adolescence and in up into the teens. So that opportunity is massive, and makes it crucially important that we strike while the iron's hot, I guess, is kind of to use a catchphrase, because they're so adaptable, and their ability to incorporate new rule sets are so profound. Something like everyday speech, although it might seem simple and rudimentary and maybe just another thing that we have to do, if done authentically and if done with great attention and diligence, can incorporate some massive change for individuals that are arriving to us with their own ways of being and preconceived or preconditioned behaviors. So those are the three reasons among hundreds that we might see that this is an important type of learning for our students.